الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا وفقها في الدين يا رب العالمين وألحقنا بعبادك الصالحين. أما بعد، يقول الله عز وجل: أذن للذين يقاتلون بأنهم ظلموا وإن الله على نصرهم لقدير. ويقول الله عز وجل في موضع آخر: ألا لعنة الله على الظالمين. ويقول الله عز وجل أيضا: إن الذين كفروا ينفقون أموالهم عليهم حسرة ثم يغلبون والذين كفروا إلى جهنم يحشرون. Today, as we see the atrocities happening in Palestine, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved the land. It is one of the most sacred lands on the face of the earth after Mecca and Medina. Just like if Mecca or Medina were to be now trampled and now attacked fearlessly through these enemies of Islam, likewise it will be necessary for us to help the people of Makkah, to help the people of Medina. Likewise, it is necessary and obligatory upon every single Muslim to aid and support our Muslim brothers in Gaza, in Palestine, in Masjid al-Aqsa. Masjid al-Aqsa has been mentioned explicitly and implicitly in so many places of the Quran. Explicitly, for example, Surah Bani Israel or Surah al-Isra. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions of the Isra and Mi'raj of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam from Makkah Mukarramah to Masjid al-Aqsa, Baytul Muqaddas. There Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't just mention Masjid al-Aqsa, but it says everything all around Masjid al-Aqsa has extreme level of barakah, extreme level of blessings, barakah. It is not like any other masjid. It is a haram. It is a haram like the harams. We have 3 harams in Islam. Masjid al-Aqsa is much older than Masjid al-Nabawi. Much older than Masjid al-Nabawi, and it has so many prophets. The first person to build Masjid al-Aqsa was Nuh alayhi salam. Nuh alayhi salam was one of the earliest prophets and Ulul Azam, one of the 5 mighty messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was the first of the 5 mighty messengers on the face of the earth, Nuh alayhi salam. Nuh alayhi salam is the one who built Masjid al-Aqsa. Subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered Dawood alayhi salam from the progeny of Banu Israel to rebuild Masjid al-Aqsa. Dawood alayhi salam built before he could complete it. He passed away. So he gave wasiyah, he gave will for his son Sulaiman alayhi salam to continue the project. And Sulaiman alayhi salam, he continued the project as he wished, as his father wished in his will. And Sulaiman alayhi salam, he came and he's finished the full project himself. So from Sulaiman alayhi salam's time, this place, this masjid is extremely blessed. Extremely blessed. This masjid is like no other masjid. I mentioned to you the verse which explicitly mentions the mention of Masjid al-Aqsa inside the Quran. There are many other places which the ulama reference that these verses are referring to Masjid al-Aqsa. Masjid al-Aqsa. I'll give you a few examples. Here in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 58, Udkhulu hadhihi al-qaryah. Enter this village or town, as it is translated. Enter this town. This town is referring to, some say Ariha and some say Baytul Maqdis. Baytul Muqaddas, both of them are correct. Baytul Maqdis and Baytul Muqaddas. So udkhul, or into that town, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referencing it to Masjidul Aqsa and Baytul Maqdis. Another one, Mubtalikum binahar. When the army were fighting, Talut and Jalut, they were allowed to drink only a handful of water. They were on the truth, they were on the true path, they were tested again and again and again. Then they came to a point where they found water. They were thirsty, extremely thirsty. And there, the greatest test was, you are not allowed to take more than a handful of water. If you do so, then you are out of the army of وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ. So Talut, the army of Talut, yes. MashaAllah. So they were with the army of Talut. So here, مُبْتَلِيكُمْ بِنَهَارٍ. This is Imam Suyuti's book. Those who want to know, this is Imam Suyuti's book, Tahbeer fi ilmit Tafseer. Subhanallah, it's a very small book, but it's absolutely amazing the amount of information he gathers regarding the verses of the Quran and the way he systemizes and the way he organizes all of these verses. Subhanallah. So here we have a chapter of all the places which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions inside the Quran, whether it's directly, whether it's indirectly. So this is why I wanted you to go through and to see for yourself how many places that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Palestine or Baytul Maqdis or Masjidul Aqsa explicitly and implicitly. Nahar Palestine or Nahar Urdun, okay, or the river in Jordan, one of the two. Then another one where the miracle of bringing back life. This was a story in juz number 3. The beginning of juz number 3, we have that story of those people who rejected life after death. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it that a person, he passed away, and then he was brought back after loads and loads of years. Here, مَرَّ عَلَى قَرْيَةٍ وَهِيَ خَاوِيَةٌ عَلَى عُرُوشِهَا. This one in Surah Baqarah, verse number 259. Verse number 259. This qarya, this town is referring to Baytul Maqdis. This qarya is referring to Baytul Maqdis. How many did we find? 1, 2, 3 now. Yeah? And then I quoted to you the verse 4. Yeah? Keep count, inshallah. Another one. Udkhulul ard. In Surah Ma'idah, verse number 21. This is also referring to Ilya, and Ilya is in Baytul Muqaddas or Baytul Maqdis. Okay? udkhulu al-qaryata al-muqaddasata allati. This is in Surah Ma'idah. This is 5, yes? Next we go on to وَاسْأَلْهُمْ عَنِ الْقَرْيَةِ الَّتِي كَانَتْ حَاضِرَةَ الْبَحْرِ. Surah A'raf 163. Verse 163 is referring to Ayla, which is also referring to Palestine. Allahu Akbar. The next verse which is mentioned regarding in Surah Yusuf, verse number 15, comes also to the mention of Baytul Maqdis. Ghayabatil Jub. When Yusuf alayhi salam was thrown inside the well, some said this well is in Baytul Maqdis, others said this well is in Jordan. Allahu A'lam. But some of the Mufassirin say this is in Baytul Maqdis. He was taken from Baytul Maqdis all the way to Egypt. Yusuf alayhi salam. So this well, Ghayabatil Jub, is referring to Baytul Maqdis. Another place which Baytul Maqdis is mentioned, or Ash-Sham is mentioned. When Sham is mentioned, Sham includes Baytul Maqdis. Baytul Maqdis, Syria, some parts of Lebanon are all included in the word Sham. We always know in hadith, more than so many hadith, mention the virtues of Sham, the Abdal of Sham, that there are 40 awliya, great awliya of Sham at every single moment. At every single moment until the world comes to an end. Until the world comes to an end in Sham, the place which is called Sham, which is including Masjidul Aqsa, including Palestine, including Jordan, including some parts of Lebanon, there will always be in that area 40 Abdal, 40 awliya that will always be there until Qiyamah. So when one passes away, another one will be replaced with another Abdal. So we know that is the land of the awliya. Land of the awliya. Here, Al-Ard allati barakna fiha. Surah Anbiya, verse number 81. Verse number 81 is referring to Sham, and here, as I said, Sham is referring to Baytul Maqdis and Syria as a whole. As a whole. The other verse said, the place which is sacred. The place which is sacred. Here, this verse tells us this, Al-Ard allati barakna fiha. The land which we have given extreme blessings in. Extreme blessings in. The next verse, which is referring to, again, Al-Ardul Muqaddasa, is verse number 105 of Surah Anbiya. Verse number 105 of Surah Anbiya. أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. Here, many of the ulama, they said that the ard here is general. Ard here is general. Some said it's referring to the whole earth. The whole earth will be given as inheritance to those slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who are pious, who are righteous. But many of the other ulama, they say this is specifically referring to Asham and especially the Ardul Muqaddasa, which is Palestine, which is Baytul Maqdis. Why? Because the word here is very clear. أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. And where do the Salihun live? We find from the other hadith, like we mentioned, the 40 Abdal will stay until Qiyamah. Is in Sham. Is in Sham. Therefore, this verse is referring to also Baytul Maqdis. It is worthy, more worthy of it being referred to Baytul Maqdis, that the earth will be inherited by the pious ones and the righteous ones, referring to the pious ones of Masjidul Aqsa and Baytul Maqdis. Don't worry, brothers. Whatever is going, the biggest superpowers lived so again and again. Okay, whatever happens, happens through the will of Allah. For us, it is to do our job. What is our job? Our job is to make istighfar. Our job is to make salawat upon Rasulullah. That's the only way ma'una and help will come from Allah. That is the only way help and aid and support will come from Allah. Allah's word, who وَمَا يَعْلَمُ جُنُودَ رَبِّكَ إِلَّا هُ. Nobody knows the army of Allah. Tayran ababil was something so small, tiny birds, tiny birds. 3 small, one in the beak, one in the pebbles, not even stones, not even rocks, pebbles. Pebbles came like rockets with their names. The Mufassirin say their names were written on those pebbles of each and every single person that was to be killed by those small tiny birds up in the sky. Who knew this? Abraha had the massive army. He thought, I'm going to go and demolish them, annihilate them. What happened? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the smallest creatures. Smallest creatures to come and annihilate every single last one of them. Abraha and his army were destroyed in totality. Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabb. Much for the might of Allah. But Allah, what is His promise? إِنَّمَا يُؤَخِّرُهُمْ لِيَوْمٍ تَشْخَصُ فِيهِ الْأَبْصَارِ وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ غَافِلٌ. Don't think Allah is ghafil. Allah is not unaware. Allah is watching everything. Allah is watching everything. Allah is not ghafil. وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ غَافِلًا عَمَّا يَعْمَلُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Of those oppressors and what they're doing, their actions. عِنْدَ اللَّهِ مَكْرُهُمْ وَإِنْ كَانَ مَكْرُهُمْ لِتَزُولَ مِنْهُ الْجِبَالُ. Their plots and plans are so dangerous. If they could, they would remove mountains. Mountains. They would remove mountains. But if Allah, smallest of bugs with the smallest of mosquito. Look at Namrud. How did Allah kill Namrud? How did Allah kill Fir'aun, the greatest tyrant of all? How did Allah kill Fir'aun? Through drowning. A fly goes inside his nose. How does a fly go inside a... People will even say, how is this even logical? We have so many things protecting our nose. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructs it. So Allah watches. Allah watches. He gives you time. He gives you time. Amma ya'malu dhalimun. They can do whatever they want. Dhalimun, the tyrants and the oppressors, they can. Yawmul qiyamah is yawmul adala. Yawmul qiyamah is yawmul Adalah, the day of justice. True justice is not in this world, brothers. Never ever think justice will be served in this world. God given us, has not told us that this is the place of justice. There will be injustices. This is the place of imtihan. This world is the place of imtihan and test. It is not the place of justice. Justice is on the day of Qiyamah. All those that oppressed every single Muslim, all those who oppressed every single non-Muslim as well, not just Muslim. وَإِنْ عَاقَبْتُمْ فَعُوقِبُوا. Look at the guidance given in jihad. وَإِنْ عَاقَبْتُمْ فَعُوقِبُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا عُوقِبْتُمْ بِهِ وَلَئِنْ صَبَرْتُمْ لَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لِلصَّابِرِينَ. إِنَّ النَّصْرَ مَعَ الصَّبْرِ. إِنَّ النَّصْرَ مَعَ الصَّبْرِ. Verily victory comes with sabr, with patience. Not always do you need the might. Not always do you need the caliphate on your side. Not always do you need all the Arab leaders to come together. They will come together and they're like the moths. They're like the moths. They're like the foam of the oceans. Useless. Absolutely useless. They can't do anything. Money doesn't do anything at that moment. They fear for what? Their own pockets, their own status, their own authorities. Today it is Palestine, tomorrow it will be Jordan, tomorrow it will be Iran, tomorrow it will be one by one will fall. One after the other will fall. If they are not helping their brothers and they are making it like a sheep eaten by a wolf, when one gets eaten, all the others one by one get weaker and weaker, and all of the others will be eaten as well. So don't think these munafiqeen can get away. These munafiqeen, by the so-called Muslims that they call themselves, they are not Muslimin. Wallahi, they cannot be Muslimin if the heart is not paining. If the heart is not paining, and if they are not letting their brothers in and aiding their brothers in whichever way possible, they cannot be true Muslimin. Alayhi Wasallam said, when pain, dhulm, oppression is on the day of judgment, will be levels of darkness is on the day of judgment. Dhulm, nobody can get away from dhulm. When a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises his hand and he is oppressed, there is no hijab between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no covering, there is no veil between him and Allah. It goes direct. And in another narration it says, even if the oppressed is a kafir, even if the oppressed is a non-Muslim, if he raises his hand, his dua will be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala immediately. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect Baytul Maqdis. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect Masjid al-Aqsa and Palestine as a whole, and Gaza especially now. The next verse that we have that is referring to Baytul Maqdis is when he entered, and he is immediately the security guard from the ants, as we know, they have a whole colony and they have a whole, just like us, we have different people working in different sectors. The ants, their nation has people working in different sectors and they have different characteristics as well. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it. This is why there's a whole surah called Surah An-Naml. In Surah An-Naml, verse number 18, Wadi Naml. This valley of Naml is referring to Sham. Baytul Maqdis, Palestine, Syria. The next verse that we have that is referring to Palestine is غُلِبَتِ الرُّومِ فِي أَدْنَى الْأَرْضِ وَهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ غَلَبِهِمْ سَيَغْلِبُونَ. Surah Ar-Rum, verse number 2 and 3. Alif Lam Mim غُلِبَتِ الرُّومِ. That Romans will be defeated. Romans are defeated. فِي أَدْنَى الْأَرْضِ وَهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ غَلَبِهِمْ سَيَغْلِبُونَ. After the defeat, within a couple of years, they will regain their strength and they will defeat. They will gain victory. Okay? And there, of course, the Muslims became happy, because end of the day, when the Romans win, it means they are Christians. They are more closer than the mushrikeen. So therefore, this was a glad tidings to the Muslim. Anyway, here it is referring to some of the mufassireen. They don't need our money. Food, water, electricity, fuel, gas, everything stopped for more than 5 days. This is pure genocide. This is pure genocide. This is murder to another level. This is against every single international law in the world. But they play whenever they feel like. Just because they are the biggest players, they think they can do whatever they wish. They think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you rain. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you power to a certain extent. But when your downfall comes, remember your downfall will be, when you go up there, you fall worse. When you show your might against Allah, Fir'aun done it. Ana rabbukumul a'la. Isn't it? Surah Al-Nazi'at. Ana rabbukumul a'la. I am your Lord. I am the Lord that you should be worshipping in this dunya. He said it. These people are saying exactly the same thing. Who is your Lord? Who is your Lord? Worship us. This is what they're saying in reality. This is not a fight between land. This is a fight between Islam and Kufr. Do not understand this mistakenly, please, brothers. أُذِنَ لِلَّذِينَ يُقَاتَلُونَ بِأَنَّهُمْ ظُلِمُوا. Why was jihad given? Why? Because people were oppressed. People were oppressed. This is why out of oppression, jihad was made allowed. Allah gave permission after oppression of 13 years, 14 years, 15 years in Makkah. Continuous oppression, continuous persecution. This is when the verse of ayah of أُذِنَ لِلَّذِينَ يُقَاتَلُونَ بِأَنَّهُمْ ظُلِمُوا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى نَصْرِهِمْ لَقَدِيرٌ. And verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you that victory and that nasr that you deserve, that you need now. And then the Badr came and then Muslims became victorious. So never ever despair. Never think that we can't do anything. We must do what we can do. What can we do? Make abundance of istighfar. Say, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. Ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir. Our wakil is Allah. Our guardian is Allah only. We don't need supporters and aiders to come and support us. Okay? Our wakil is Allah. Ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir. How great of a guardian is He, and how great of a supporter is He. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We'll end there, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.